applause. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about some research that I've been involved with in Australia within information systems and social work, its current and future roles. So I'm going to talk a bit about the rationale for the research, the aims of the research, and the progress so far. But I need to provide a bit of a qualifier, as other presenters have done. Firstly, I didn't realise that I'd be presenting in a very specialised stream, so a lot of the slides are stuff that we already know, but I can skip through those later, I suppose. The second thing is that what I'm confining my remarks to what's going on in Australia at the moment. So I've given insight into what's going on in Australia, but drawing from what's going on around the world as well. And when I talk about information systems, I'm talking very much, I'm focusing on the computerised systems that are used to record information about service users and worker activity in human service organisations. So I'm not talking about ICT more generally, or web-based communication systems, the internet, etc. I'm talking about the systems that are used to produce case records and record demographic information about clients. Now the rationale for the research, again I can probably skip through this one, but we all know that social work agencies both in the government and non-government sector are implementing increasingly complex information systems. Officially in response to demands for greater efficiency, accountability and transparency, as we've heard from Gareth just now. But what effect is this having on frontline practice? As a social worker, that's the question I keep coming back to all the time. There's been a lot of research in the UK coming out recently, which has highlighted the unforeseen and unintended consequences of implementing these forms of technology in human service organisations. And the growing concern, and this is where it starts to deal with what's happening in Australia, that information systems are actually impeding rather than enhancing the provision of services. Some of the general criticisms that come out of the literature: frontline practitioners are spending up to 80% of their time on admin tasks created by the information system. It's from my own observation and other people's as well. The focus and form of social work has consequently changed from working with service users, from actually visiting them, to gathering and recording information. Also, that bureaucratic rather than professional forms of accountability seem to prevail in human service organisations these days. When you actually look at what's recorded on these systems, the material is much more informational rather than social. What that means is that people are trying to record so-called facts about people rather than providing any analysis about how we should intervene to assist them. And throughout the development of these systems, there's been very little attention to pay to how useful frontline practitioners might actually find these tools. And the development's been very much tool-led in terms of what's possible, what can we do next in technology, rather than user-led in terms of what will we find useful, what do we actually need. Focusing in Australia, there's been a lot of problems in child protection services. Last year there was an ombudsman inquiry into what was going on in child protection in Victoria. The final report was highly critical, and I was asked to analyse the report for an agency, but when I did so with my IT lens or IS lens, I found that 61 of the 399 points made in the final report relate to problems with the information system. One of the conclusions of the Ombudsman was that the information system had not only failed to provide the child protection system with a more effective tool than its predecessor, but it has also impaired the department's efficiency without providing adequate functionality. Very severe criticism indeed, and bear in mind that 61 points out of 399 led to that. And just thinking about the scale of the problem really, the projected cost of the information system in Victoria was $29 million. Already it's sort of blown out to 95 million Australian dollars. And still it doesn't work, and as the Ombudsman reflected, it actually impedes the delivery of services. Similarly, in New South Wales, there was a Special Commission of Inquiry in 2008. Justice Wood concluded that the information management system technology is not adequately suited for the purpose of supporting workers to assess and intervene in the lives of children and young people, and its complexities and shortcomings continue to be a source of frustration and delay to its staff. So again, the system is getting in the way of actually providing services. There's many more examples in the literature of how information systems don't meet the need of a range of stakeholders in human service organisations. And this is reflected in the preliminary findings of the research really, that we're not just talking about frontline practitioners, but also supervisors, managers, data analysts, policy advisors, all of whom are describing the current systems as being quite inadequate for their needs. And this has been quite an understated problem in Australia, and it's certainly been under-researched. So the aim of this research that I'm involved with is to produce knowledge that will inform and guide the future development of information systems specifically for human service organisations. So I'll turn now to the progress so far. Firstly, we wanted to know, or I wanted to know particularly, how we got to this point where we've spent a lot of money implementing systems that actually get in the way of providing good social work services. One of the first things was that designers don't seem to understand the task of social workers necessarily, and why would they really? And they've used understandings of the priorities in business organisations to guide their designs. And there's been a mismatch between expectation and delivery. Also, human service organisations, this is something else that I'm finding, struggle to define their needs in relation to information systems. They don't actually know what they want. When I ask them the question, it's very difficult to answer. Also, these things have been designed very much according to the agendas of managers who are concerned with measurement and quantification rather than frontline practitioners. But overall, it's been driven by this pervasive belief that bigger is better when it comes to information systems, and that we must invest in technology to improve services. And that's one of those elephant in the room situations. Nobody wants to question that. I'm probably in the wrong room to be questioning that, but I'll run quickly as I go. But it's been referred to as technocratic ideology by Spratt and Houston. But I think, given the emerging problems with information systems, we need to be critical, we need to ask critical questions. We need to ask the big question, or address the big question, excuse me, of what form of information systems do we actually need in human service organisations? Not what is possible, what do we actually need as practitioners? And can the same system meet the needs of a range of stakeholders in a human service organisation? There's another question we need to think about. One of the problems has been that previous research has been based on individualistic cognitive models. There's been very little attention paid to the social and organisational context of the use of these systems. Putting off is the idea of social informatics, which is the interdisciplinary study of the design, uses and consequences of information technology. It takes into account their intersection with institutional and cultural contexts. The progress so far in developing partnerships with government and non-government agencies to conduct the research, which is quite a long process because obviously there's a political issue here. Given that so much time and money has been invested in these things, it's very hard to sort of publicly critique them. While privately they acknowledge there is a major problem, which is why they're sort of letting me in the door. It's interesting that they're still thinking that more complex systems can be developed to solve the problem, so for them the answer is still technical. And the next stage of the research is to conduct some ethnographical research with human service practitioners to identify their current uses of information systems and their future needs for them. So drawing from ethnography, and I can see that a lot of this has been done overseas. It also it needs to be done again in Australia because we're very reticent to look overseas to see what's been going on. So it's almost like we need to prove it yet again. But we'll end up with a thick description of the uses of information systems from practitioners at the front line of practice right through to head office. But there's been problems previously when these ethnographic accounts have been left to the interpretation of information system designers. So there's a need for an interdisciplinary approach to this. We need to develop shared understandings of the needs of practitioners in human service organisations so we can bridge the divide between IS providers, purchasers and the users of information systems. Just some final thoughts. Obviously, I'm open to accusations of being anti-technology and being a bit of a neo-Luddite. When I say these things, personally, I believe that technology has its place, but we just need to be a bit more discerning about where we're going to place it, particularly when thinking about social work as a profession. Interesting that when you go through literature, much of it's very pro-technology, so it's about how we can use ever more complex systems. Very easy to get sucked into that. I'm quite excited about it. I mean, I do love technology, that's why I'm here, but I just think it has its place. Honestly, I do. I really do. I think we actually need to stand back from the debates to ask a critical question of whether more technology is always the answer in human service organisations. We need to remember the aims of human service organisations. To serve clients, to provide services, it isn't about furthering technology, it's about providing services. It's plain in the lectern. We also need to think about the means of achieving the aims of human service organisations. which is through the relationship we have with service users. If we don't have that relationship, nothing is going to get done, as Hasenfeld reminds us. And certainly from my own ethnographic fieldwork in Queensland, going back to the point that frontline practitioners are spending more time these days servicing information systems than service users. But I think this is perhaps the most urgent problem. It's certainly one that comes up over and over as I discuss things with industry. And actually see that. Finally, I think, and the words of my grandmother, Ringa Mays, as I say, this is one of my favourite phrases. It wasn't until now that I really understand what I think she meant. When we consider the future design of information systems for human service organisations, we might need to entertain the idea that sometimes less is more. And this is when I start running for the door. Thank you.